everyone. Today I'm going to talk about parent-teacher conferences and why we do them. Why are they important? What are the things that you need to talk about in your conference to achieve a successful conference? Um, and really just what the ideal structure of a conference would look like for me. First of all, I want to start by saying that um, my conferences that I've done since I've been a teacher's assistant, we really don't put a time restraint on them. We usually schedule them about 30 minutes apart, but if someone needs more, obviously we accommodate that. We don't ever rush a parent. Um, I want to make sure that I've answered all of their questions. I want to give them time between each thing that we talk about to ask questions, and I usually try to remember to tell them that at the beginning, that if there's anything that you need to ask, please let me know. Stop me, ask me anything you need clarification, because I feel that a conference is not successful unless the parent leaves there having all their questions answered and feeling comfortable. You want them to walk out, happy about what was talked about. You want them to feel that it was a positive thing. Um, a conference should never, in my opinion, be a negative thing, because as an educator and as a parent, I see both sides. No parent ever wants to feel like their child isn't succeeding. And even when a child is struggling, it's important to remember that it doesn't mean they're not succeeding. There's just certain areas that are not as strong as others. Um, so that's the biggest thing that I keep in mind with conference is I always, 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 no matter how hard a child is struggling, try to open with something positive. And then after that, after you've talked about how, they're so great at this, they're the strong points of the child in your room, then you can go into the things that you feel that they are struggling with. But then I always try to remember to end the conference again on a positive note. Um, but I really love having them in my class. They're sweet. This is so that you want to make sure that you have more positive than negative things to say about each child, and that's just because you want to keep that good bond with the parents, and you want the parents to feel that your child is in the right hands and in the right care. Because there's no worse feeling as a parent than feeling like your child is in the hands of someone that doesn't have their best interest in mind. Um, I personally feel for my conferences, we recommend that children don't come. Obviously, if they show up with their child, you're going to do your best to do the conference in a professional manner without having the child really interact with it and hear the things that are being said. But I feel that parents can really focus and concentrate more when it's just you and them. But however, like I said, I would never tell anyone they couldn't bring their child to the conference. I would never turn them away if they showed up with their child. But I personally do feel that a conference is more effective when it's just adults, when you can talk one-on-one with no interruptions and can really have in-depth conversations about things that, when a child's around, you just don't get to have, because you have lots of little interruptions and things you need to stop for. Um, so the purpose of a conference, in my opinion, is to show the parents where their child's at. Um, one of the reasons being, I think a lot of parents sometimes aren't sure where their child stands, or they might have some concerns about their child, and they might have something in their head made up that is this totally big thing that it's not. So I think that meeting with them and sitting down and showing them, look how far your child's come, is a great thing. It's a great opportunity. So I think that it's definitely important to touch on the developmental overview of the whole child. Uh, Development is a big thing. My example for that would be, I do 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, so we work on tracer pages a lot. From the beginning of the year, the children start working on tracing their first name, and then as they get better, they'll move to their first and last name, and then they'll get to where they independently just have the dotted line where they're writing their name instead of tracing the lines with their name. And I keep all of these from the very first time they do a tracer page until I meet with their parents. And then after that, I will still hold on to all those I have and collect them. So at the end of the year, I can pull out that first one and last one. I think this is a great teaching moment and a great example of the way the child is developing with something, because you can show the parents that they are progressing, but you can also, it's a great opportunity to say, well, I noticed that your child's holding the pen or pencil, whatever writing utensil they're using, with their whole hand and a whole fist motion. But what they need to be doing is grasping it with their fingers. And what I like to tell my parents is the best way that you can help out with this, because parents always want to know, well, how can I help at home? I tell my parents, anytime you catch them drawing, writing, anything, go up and put whatever they're writing with in their hand correctly. And just the repetitive motion of correcting it over time eventually will begin to feel more natural, and it is what they will want to use. So I think that that's a great way to show, how far they come and the progress being made, and then also incorporate the parents. And if, you really want to continue to help your child, this is how you can help at home so that we can continue to get their writing and tracing better and better to get them where they need to be to go on to the next year. Other things that's important to remember with developmental overview is that every family has different lives. Each child in your room is going to be developing at a different pace, and I think it's really important to not look at everybody as a whole. Everybody should be counting to 100 by this time, or everybody should be able to identify 10 letters by this time or 20 letters by this time. You really need to look at each child. How old are they? Is this their first, second, or third year? Where are they academically? Where have they been? What exposure have they had? And then also take into consideration their family lives, because obviously children that come from a situation of more stress and, not as nurturing of an environment are sometimes not going to be as willing to learn, because that's not going to be the only thing on their mind. So I think it's just really important to remember that each child's going to be somewhere different, and along with that, to make sure that you tailor the developmental needs for each child and, really their goals of where they should be based off of them individually and not a whole class, so that you can give their parent or caregiver a better look at that. And the second thing that I think is important to include in a conference is to formulate the goals in a parent-teacher conference. By doing this, I think it's important that this kind of goes along with the having positive things to say. So you want to say, your child's doing this and this and this and this, and that is great. And here are some goals that I've thought of personally to meet their needs. And again, this goes along with, you need to look at the individual basis of each child, their family structure, what kind of living situation that they live in, their language. Do they speak English fluently, or are they at home where another language is spoken? Is language a barrier that's keeping them from getting to the next goal or getting where they need to be? And by doing this, I think if you individualize the goals for each child, I believe that it will create a more successful outcome, because the goals will be more realistic and will be something that you can look at your plan and get them individually each where they need to be. I think the point of a goal is to kind of just stop for a minute and reflect with the parent and explain to them, this is the goal I set for your child. A big one I know with my age group that I work with is showing them letter recognition. And, in our fall conferences where I was able to say, your child was able to recognize and tell me the letter sounds for 8 letters. By our winter conference, in February, I would love for them to be able to identify between 15 and 20 letter sounds and letters. And then ideally, again, by the end of the year, they'll be able to identify all of the letters, uppercase and lowercase, and their sounds. And along with that, then I'll say, but obviously it will be tailored to each child's need. So I will look at where they stand after winter conference, and then kind of look at the goals and set those realistic goals for spring. I don't think that you should ever set a goal, or I feel it's not effective if I set a goal in the fall that I want met by the end of the year, because I don't know where that child is going to go in that middle point and where they will go as the year progresses. So that's just some important things that I like to keep in mind to make my conferences as effective as they can be. And I know I touched on this already, but just positivity. You want the goals to be positive. You don't want a parent to ever leave feeling like that their child isn't meeting where they need to be. You want them to say, it's great, they're here, they're doing all this, but this is just the next step to get them more prepared for where they want to go. I try to make sure that parents know that what we're setting as their goals are in the best interest of their child and are only going to help them as they progress into the following school years. Um, so, with that being said, in the conclusion of my conferences, I always make sure that I, first of all, conclude with um, did I miss anything? Is there anything you have any questions on or need clarity on, or just anything you felt we haven't covered that's important? Because I know I touched on this a little bit before, but I feel that a conference is not effective if they leave having unanswered questions, or if they leave feeling unsure, or if they leave, just feeling down, feeling discouraged, feeling like their child is in the hands of someone that doesn't have their best interest. And I really think this is another one of those opportunities that you can form a positive relationship with the parents in your classroom. You want them to know you're listening, and that's important too, to always make sure. I try to make sure that they can tell I'm giving them my undivided attention, not playing with my computer or messing with my phone or looking around the room. I want them to feel that I really am listening and that I really do have the best interest of their child in mind. So, I mean, as my conclusion, that's just kind of how I feel that it's important to do it, because you want to make sure you've cleared up all questions. And then I also like to end on one more positive note. Um, I really enjoy having your child in my class because she's so sweet. She makes friends with everybody. She's hopeful. Um, she's just a sweet little girl. Something along those lines, just to end it with, wow, my child's teacher really does notice the positive things in my child, even if my child is struggling with some things. Um, so that is how I would do a parent-teacher conference, and those are some of the things that I feel is important to be touched on in them. Thanks. Bye.